I mean, over the last few weeks, we've said a lot about monetary policy. We've watched the shilling literally bucking the pressure or giving into pressure from international forces. But today things seem a little bit better, and we're told that tea exporters have entered the market selling dollars. Is that what's led to the respite?
Yeah, I think that's mainly what is causing the respite because by and large, if you look at most of the other factors, there hasn't been a lot of change. And I think also in addition to the tea exporters, there's also been a very firm statement today jointly issued by the finance minister and the central bank governor, to the extent that they're actually going to institute additional measures to compel banks to, release their dollar positions or unwind their dollar positions. And one of them, I think, is that they've actually cut the exposure of banks in forex by about half, and they've actually stated that they're going to continue mopping up liquidity. So we should probably expect a little respite for now, but by and large, it's not yet clear whether we're out of the woods yet.
The CBK is said to be back in the market with repo purchases, $144 million on sale today. Now, we've watched them do this thing, reverse repos, then stop, and then do it again. I mean, is it going to help this time around?
No, I think in all fairness, I think the CBK has done as much as it can in terms of using the tools at its disposal, in terms of influencing the shilling using monetary policy. And by and large, I think the bulk of what we are seeing is actually issues that are probably beyond the scope of monetary policy tools. And that's why I think bulk of it, I think, is basically still BOP problems. But there might be a silver lining in the whole thing, in the sense that as the shilling continues to weaken, our exports tend to look more attractive out there. So we might actually probably end up selling more in terms of volumes, and in terms of the inflows that are coming in, we might end up seeing more forex holdings and perhaps also a stabilization of the currency.
You talk about this joint statement between the Minister of Finance and the Governor of the Central Bank. Now, here's the situation. The focus in terms of stabilizing the shilling has been on monetary policy. But experts are saying it cannot work without the support of fiscal policy. We need to see things happening on the taxation side. We need to see spending curbed. And we need to see commitment on the part of the Treasury to play their part and just to exercise some kind of responsibility towards the shilling. What's your view on this one?
I entirely agree with that. I think to the extent that interest rates have been adjusted, to the extent that various administrative controls have been put in place, the rest, I think, is really on the fiscal policy side of things. And I think perhaps what might probably bring in some confidence in a big way is if the IMF releases the funds that under the ECF, and I think the team that is currently visiting this week might probably be compelled to do that, given the weakness that the economy is going through currently. But by and large, I think we are past the point where it's just an issue of raising interest rates and mopping up and that kind of thing. I think it's really now an issue of fiscal policy and other policies, especially gearing towards looking at the BOP position, because I think that now is really where the problem is.
On the flip side is this issue of higher interest rates, an improvement or an increase rather of 400 basis points, and its impact on public debt. I mean, the yields are rising significantly. Who's going to be investing in government treasuries? Is the government going to be able to raise money going forward, particularly in a very important and expensive year, 2012?
Well, it's a difficult situation that they are in because, like you rightly pointed out, they're actually borrowing. In some cases, I think cost of borrowing has gone up about 7.5 times compared to the same period last year. And then again, when you look at the external debt position, they're actually paying more now that practically all the currencies that they borrowed under have gained against the shilling. So that has actually driven our debt level from around 50% of GDP to around 57% of GDP to around August. So there's definitely going to be pressure. But I think in as much as the projects that they had put in place in the budget are concerned, they might not have a lot of choice in terms of continuing to borrow at the current rates. But perhaps now there's actually need now to start having a discussion about austerity measures. We really need to look at our fiscal policy. We really need to look at our budget, and we really need to start cutting down on non-essential items, especially on the recurrent expenditure side, where there's quite a lot of items, I think, that we can defer for now.
Well, apparently the good news is that the heavens have opened up. It started to rain on the hinterland of Kenya, and that should at least support agriculture. And in the end, it should support food prices, and energy prices should be reduced. So the rain's coming. Does that indicate that inflation could be abating?
That's very, very correct. When you look at the bulk of the items that comprise, or rather have the greatest weight in the consumer price index, most of them are really related to weather factors, food, energy, and the like. So if the rains are okay, as has been predicted, and I think by early next year, we should probably see inflation slowing down, if not declining in some instances, assuming, of course, the international situation will also have improved. The world might not slip into bigger problems than it is already.
And finally, let me throw 3 stocks at you. Trans-Century down 8.3%. That's after recovering over 8% in the week before. Rio Vapinga doing well, and also KQ with the AGM around the rights issue tomorrow. Which is the stock we should be watching and why?
I think the place where I would really put my money is companies that are going to be favored or are actually being favored by the current environment of a weak exchange rate. And that's why you are seeing the likes of agricultural stocks going up, the likes of tourism-related stocks going up. KQ should perform well, TPS Serena should perform well, and companies that are generally have a heavy export base. Right. So that's really where I think the opportunities lie. Otherwise, other than that, I would probably park my money in short-term government paper.